Welcome to G Fun Facts Online. Is it a golden ticket to the American dream, a pathway for the world's brightest minds to fuel a nation's innovation? Or is it a weapon used by corporations to replace American workers with cheaper foreign labor? Today, we are diving deep into one of the most complex and fiercely debated threads in the entire U.S. immigration system: the H-1B visa. This isn't just about paperwork. It's about economic competitiveness, the future of work, and the very definition of who gets to build a life in America. You've probably heard the term H-1B thrown around, especially in discussions about the tech industry. But what is it really? At its core, the H-1B is a temporary visa that allows U.S. employers to hire foreign workers in what are called specialty occupations. Think of jobs that require a highly specialized body of knowledge, usually backed by at least a bachelor's degree. We're talking about software engineers, doctors, architects, financial analysts, the kind of professionals often seen as the engine of a modern economy. The visa typically lasts for 3 years and can be extended to 6, often serving as a critical stepping stone towards getting a permanent green card. This program has become the lifeblood of the U.S. tech economy. Giants like Amazon, Google, and Microsoft rely on it to staff their ranks with talent from around the globe. But for every person who sees it as essential for staying competitive, there's another who sees it as a source of deep anxiety and resentment. To understand this conflict, we need to go back to its origins. The H-1B program as we know it today was created by the Immigration Act of 1990. This was a major overhaul of the U.S. immigration system, and it established the H-1B with an initial annual cap of 65,000 visas. This number, 65,000, would become a central point of contention for decades. This wasn't a guest worker program for agriculture. It was specifically designed to attract high-skilled professionals, particularly in the booming fields of science, technology, engineering, and math, or STEM. As the dot-com boom of the late 90s exploded, the demand for tech workers went through the roof, and the 65,000 cap was suddenly not enough. So, Congress temporarily boosted the cap, first to 115,000, and then, in the year 2000, all the way up to 195,000 visas per year. But after that boom went bust, the cap eventually fell back to 65,000 in 2004. However, that same year, a crucial change was made. A new, separate pool of 20,000 visas was created exclusively for foreign professionals who had earned a master's degree or higher from a U.S. university. This master's cap created a special pathway for people who had already invested in the American education system. So that brings our grand total to 85,000 visas per year, 65,000 for the regular cap, and 20,000 for the master's cap. Keep that number, 85,000, in your head, because it's the key to understanding why the application process has become a frantic, high-stakes game of chance. So how does someone actually get an H-1B visa? For both the company and the aspiring employee, it's like navigating a complex maze filled with paperwork, deadlines, and a whole lot of luck. First, you need to understand that an individual can't just apply for an H-1B visa on their own. It is an employer-sponsored visa, which means a U.S. company has to start the process. The company must have a real job offer for a specialty occupation. The first formal step is for the employer to file something called a Labor Condition Application, or LCA, with the Department of Labor. This is a critical document. In it, the employer has to make some very important promises. They have to swear that they will pay the H-1B worker either the prevailing wage for that job in that specific city, or the actual wage they pay their other employees with similar skills, whichever is higher. This rule is supposed to guarantee that hiring a foreign worker doesn't drive down wages for U.S. workers. The employer also has to attest that the working conditions will be fair and that there isn't a strike or lockout happening at the company. They even have to post a notice telling their current employees that they intend to hire an H-1B worker. Once the Department of Labor certifies this application, which usually takes about a week, the company can move to the next stage. And this is where things get crazy. Remember that 85,000 annual visa cap? Well, in recent years, the number of people applying has absolutely dwarfed that number. We're talking about hundreds of thousands of applications for just 85,000 spots. For the fiscal year 2024, there were over 780,000 eligible registrations. That's more than 9 applicants for every single available visa. Because of this overwhelming demand, the government had to create a lottery system. During a specific registration period, usually in March, companies pay a small fee to electronically register each potential employee they want to hire. Once that window closes, the U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services, or USCIS, conducts a random computerized lottery. First, they run the lottery for the 65,000 regular spots. Then, any master's degree holders from U.S. universities who weren't selected are thrown into a second lottery for the 20,000 master's cap spots. If your name is selected, congratulations! You've won the chance to apply. That's right, winning the lottery doesn't get you the visa. It just gives your employer a 90-day window to file the real petition. This is where the mountain of paperwork comes in. The employer files Form I-129, the petition for a non-immigrant worker. This is a massive submission that includes the certified LCA, extensive proof that the job is a specialty occupation, and tons of evidence of the employee's qualifications, diplomas, transcripts, letters of experience, you name it. The filing fees alone can run into thousands of dollars, and that's before considering legal fees. If, after all that, USCIS approves the petition, the final steps depend on where the employee is. If they're already in the U.S. on another visa, their status might just switch over to H-1B on October 1st, the start of the fiscal year. But if they're outside the country, they have one more hurdle: a visa interview at a U.S. embassy. A consular officer will review everything one last time before finally stamping that precious visa into their passport, allowing them to travel to the U.S. and start their new job. It's a long, expensive, and stressful process, with the odds stacked against you. And that's before we even get to the recent, dramatic changes that are turning this whole system on its head. But before we get there, let's look at why so many companies and individuals are willing to go through this gauntlet. What's the upside? Proponents argue that the H-1B program is a vital gateway for talent, a tool that keeps the United States at the cutting edge of global innovation. The primary argument is that it addresses a critical skills gap. In rapidly evolving fields like artificial intelligence, biotech, and clean energy, the demand for specialized expertise often outpaces the number of qualified American workers. The H-1B allows companies, universities, and research labs to tap into a global talent pool to fill these crucial roles. But it's not just about filling jobs, it's about creating them. And this is where we get to the most powerful argument in favor of the program: the incredible track record of innovation and entrepreneurship from former H-1B holders. Many of the most recognizable names in the tech world, people who have fundamentally reshaped our economy and our lives, got their start in the U.S. with an H-1B visa. Think about Elon Musk, the man behind Tesla and SpaceX, who revolutionized electric cars and private spaceflight, initially came to the U.S. on an H-1B. Think about the leaders of two of the world's most powerful companies, Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, and Sundar Pichai, the CEO of Google's parent company, Alphabet. Both are former H-1B holders who have led their companies to incredible heights. The story of Eric Yuan, the founder of Zoom, is particularly telling. He was rejected for a U.S. visa 8 times before finally getting an H-1B. His company then became an indispensable communication tool for the entire world during the pandemic. Or consider Jyoti Bansal, who arrived on an H-1B in 2000 and later founded the software company AppDynamics, which Cisco acquired for $3.7 billion. These aren't just isolated anecdotes. Research has shown a direct correlation between higher H-1B admissions and an increase in patent filings. Immigrants, particularly those with advanced degrees in science and engineering, patent at a higher rate than native-born citizens. Furthermore, some research suggests a job multiplier effect. One study found that for every H-1B position a company requests, an average of 7.5 additional jobs are created for U.S. workers. The logic is that these high-skilled workers enable business expansion, which then requires hiring more people in marketing, sales, administration, and support roles. These workers are also typically well paid, with a median wage significantly higher than the average U.S. worker. They pay taxes, they buy goods and services, and they contribute to Social Security and Medicare, fueling the economy in a very direct way. From this perspective, the H-1B isn't just a visa program. It's an economic engine, a magnet for the world's best and brightest that creates a positive ripple effect throughout the entire country. However, for every story of a visionary CEO, there's a counter-narrative, one that paints a much darker picture of the H-1B program. This is the point of contention, where the visa is seen not as a gateway for talent, but as a tool for abuse and the displacement of American workers. At the very heart of this controversy is the accusation of cheap labor. Critics argue that the program has strayed from its original intent of finding unique talent and has instead become a way for companies to hire foreign workers for less money than their American counterparts. While the law requires employers to pay the prevailing wage, critics contend that there are loopholes in how this wage is calculated. This allows some companies to legally pay H-1B workers on the lower end of the salary scale, effectively suppressing wages for everyone in that field. One study from the National Bureau of Economic Research estimated that without the H-1B program, the wages of U.S. computer scientists would have been up to 5% higher in 2001. Critics also point a finger at the types of companies that are the biggest users of the program. Often, they are large IT outsourcing firms, which have been accused of using the visa to facilitate the offshoring of American jobs. This leads to the most explosive charge against the program, that it directly causes American workers to be laid off. There are numerous, gut-wrenching reports of American tech workers being fired, only to be forced to train their H-1B replacements as a condition of receiving their severance package. Imagine that. You're losing your job, and your final task is to teach the person taking it from you how to do it. These stories, documented in news reports and congressional testimony, paint a stark picture of a system that some believe has been weaponized against the American workforce. For example, a lawsuit against the IT services company Cognizant alleged that the firm intentionally discriminated against non-Indian workers, using the H-1B program to build a massive bench of foreign nationals who could be placed in U.S. companies at lower costs. And this isn't just about big corporations. One resident in Tracy, California, was convicted of visa fraud for filing petitions with fake statements about work projects at Cisco. The abuse is real, and it's been prosecuted. Adding fuel to the fire is the fact that many of the top H-1B employers are also conducting massive layoffs. One analysis found that the top 30 H-1B employers in 2022 had laid off at least 85,000 workers in 2022 and early 2023. This raises a very pointed question. If these companies are laying off tens of thousands of workers, why do they still need to hire so many new foreign guest workers? Finally, there's a significant criticism about the effect on the visa holders themselves. Because an H-1B visa is tied to a specific employer, it can create a situation critics call indentured servitude. Workers have very limited job mobility. If they want to leave a bad boss or a toxic work environment, they can't just quit and find a new job. They have to find a new employer willing to go through the expensive and uncertain process of sponsoring their visa transfer. If they lose their job, they have only a 60-day grace period to find a new sponsor, or they must leave the country. This power imbalance can leave workers vulnerable to exploitation, afraid to speak up about low wages or poor conditions for fear of losing their immigration status. This combination of concerns has created a powerful narrative that the H-1B program is a flawed system that benefits corporations at the expense of both American workers and the foreign workers it's supposed to help. Which brings us to the present day, where the H-1B landscape is being shaken to its core. In a move that sent shockwaves through the tech and immigration worlds, the Trump administration announced in September of 2025 a dramatic and controversial change to the program, a new $100,000 fee for each new H-1B petition. Let me repeat that, a $100,000 fee. This is a staggering increase from the previous filing fees, which were typically only a few $1,000s. The stated goal is to force companies to hire more Americans and to ensure the H-1B is used only for the absolute highest paid, most highly skilled foreign workers. As you can imagine, the reaction has been swift and sharply divided. Proponents argue this will finally curb the cheap labor abuse. By making it so expensive, companies will no longer be able to use the H-1B as a cost-saving measure. They believe it will force wages up for American tech workers. However, critics, including business groups like the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and many universities, have warned of dire consequences. They argue the fee will be devastating for smaller companies, startups, and nonprofits. A fledgling tech startup that needs a brilliant AI engineer simply won't be able to afford the fee, putting them at a massive disadvantage against a giant like Google or Microsoft that can easily absorb the cost. There are also deep concerns about sectors like healthcare and education, which rely on H-1B workers to fill critical jobs in underserved areas, but operate on much thinner margins. The U.S. Chamber of Commerce has already stated it is exploring legal action to challenge the new fee. And that's not all. Alongside the new fee, there's a proposal to completely scrap the random lottery system. The new plan would prioritize H-1B petitions based on wage levels. The higher the salary a company offers, the greater the chance of being selected. The idea is to filter for the best and brightest and stop companies from using the program for entry-level positions. But critics argue this would heavily favor big tech companies in high-cost cities like San Francisco and New York, while making it nearly impossible for a hospital in a rural area or a university in the Midwest to compete for talent. It could also disadvantage younger, brilliant graduates who naturally start at lower salaries. So the H-1B program stands at a crossroads. The future is uncertain. Will these restrictive policies continue, potentially leading to a brain drain as global talent looks to more welcoming countries like Canada or Australia? Or will there be a push for comprehensive reform that addresses the very real abuses while still recognizing the program's economic benefits? Or could legal challenges or a change in policy roll back these dramatic new rules, returning us to the same old debate? The H-1B visa is a study in contrasts. It's a beacon of hope for the world's most talented minds and a source of deep anxiety for American workers who feel left behind. The success stories are undeniable, but so are the allegations of abuse. The central challenge remains what it has always been. How do you build an immigration system that attracts the talent needed for economic growth while protecting the jobs and wages of your own citizens? There is no easy answer. As the U.S. continues to navigate its place in a hyper-competitive global economy, the future of the H-1B visa will be a crucial part of the story. Thanks for tuning in to G Fun Facts Online.